went out with the story of National Geographic, and this was a pivotal moment in my journey as a storyteller, because up until now I have assumed that I had to let go of my childhood dream of becoming a scientist. I thought, okay, I've let that go, I'm going to become a photographer now, this is a different path, I can't do science as this. But when I released that video, I got messages from scientists that said, we learned new things from your video. We didn't know, for example, at the last few seconds the bees are sticking out their tongues. They said, we didn't know they do that at such a young age. And that's the moment I realized, wait a minute, actually, I can contribute new understanding myself. I'm not just capturing the research of others, I'm not just translating the science of others, I can contribute new scientific understanding as well. And so that's part of what happened with my Hummingbird project as well. I was there to take images for a magazine story, but I saw this opportunity to show the magic of their movement as well, and that could only be done through video. And so I was able to use a very specialty camera that shows the movement of hummingbirds 100 times slower than our eyes can see. And so I'm going to share this next video that shows these experiments and these movements with a high-speed camera. Let's roll this.
Really worth an applause. I was here just feeling the room as well, and I could almost feel everybody not on the edge of their seats, but there was this emotion that you were able to bring, and hitting the sweet spot, especially of, you know, this, what the scientists were telling you, that they could pay attention to more detail than they never did before, but also for us as an audience, not really paying attention to hummingbirds that closely. I'm curious to know, Caitlin mentioned it again as well, the importance of knowing your audience. Other than the scientists, was there something else that you noticed of how different audiences received the different formats of the visual storytelling that you were pushing out?
No, that was the real lesson with this hummingbird video. I mean, the hummingbird video, the bee video, these were just kind of experiments. I wanted to see if I could capture this process, this movement. They were sort of side projects. They weren't my central assignment. That, you know, that you can't print a video in a magazine. But when I created those videos, I saw very different responses based on how I shared those videos. So the bee video, for example, it went out as part of a TED Talk. It became very popular online. It was very popular on YouTube, whereas the hummingbird video was not at all. And yet, when I showed them in person on a stage, the hummingbird video has much more impact. And I thought, what's going on here? You know, up until that point, I was simply just thinking about, you know, how do you light an image? How do you make that image itself impactful? But then, when I started to see people responding to the video based on how I shared it, I thought, there's another component here to think about in storytelling, not just how to make an individual image or a video beautiful or arresting or interesting, but how you share that content, what platform you use, whether it's on a stage, whether it's online, matters. How you package it matters. And so that really inspired me to think from the beginning, rather than as an experiment or as an accident, as an incidental side project. What if I took from the very beginning the intention to build a story and experiment with new ways of sharing that story? And that's how I approached the next project, which is on jellyfish.
Yes.
So instead of traveling through the world and visiting labs across the world, I wanted to actually become the jellyfish scientist myself. And so what I did with my assistant Mark is I converted my garage into a jellyfish lab, where I had my mother ship my old aquarium equipment that I had as a kid. I had 8 aquariums as a kid. I learned how to keep saltwater tanks, and so I converted that childhood passion into this jellyfish lab, where we brought in jellyfish. We learned how to breed them in my garage. And the central thesis of this project was, can I change how people think about jellyfish and feel about jellyfish purely by inventing new ways to film them? And what I mean by that, here's an example of one of these technologies that I used, that I developed to try to film jellyfish in a new way. This is a special camera that's built onto a microscope stage, and we figured out how to send it into an aquarium through the front of the glass without the water leaking everywhere, so that I could create this immersive view of jellyfish. And so I'll show you kind of what we were able to capture. This is kind of a close-up view of this baby jellyfish's life. And so I'm gonna take you through the secret world of jellyfish. Let me show you. What you see here, all these funny little, they look like anemones.
Yeah.
They're actually baby jellyfish. Jellyfish start their life attached to the seafloor.
Okay.
In this case, they're attached to mussel shells, and they hang out there with their tentacles, just grabbing whatever animals float by, and they stay in that little form, like a little tree, underwater for months and months, until the right signals appear in the water, whether it's temperature or salinity. When they get that cue from their environment, they start reorganizing their body, just like that honeybee. And in this case, they pinch their body into this series of discs. It's almost like a stack of tires. Mm-hmm. Each one of those discs then grows its own set of arms and becomes a separate jellyfish. So this polyp is cloning itself into a whole stack of jellyfish that are all connected, and one by one, those jellyfish break free and start their life in the open ocean.
Wow.
And so what you see here, this is called an ephyra that's cloning itself and breaking free, and that's when it starts to become this thing that we're more familiar with. And so over the weeks, that little ephyra pulses, it feeds, it grows, and transforms into this creature that we know.
Who would have known? And this is all filmed in your converted garage.
Yes, this is a little aquarium about this big.
Wow.
Where I'm trying to capture this sort of secret process.
So not only a National Geographic photographer, you converted your garage, you became a jellyfish scientist. And I'm curious, what happened? What did you do with this footage? We talked about, the ladybug, the hummingbird. What did you do with the jellyfish photographs and videos?
The lesson I took from this project, this is a creature that we think of as being so simple. Some people think they're beautiful, some people think they're terrible. Mm-hmm. But nobody thinks that part about jellyfish. We think of them as just, what is there to see here? What is there to learn? But in reality, when you look, this little structure, the notch you see along the edge of its body, inside that notch is this special structure that is in fact a gypsum crystal that the jellyfish secretes that lives on a bed of sensory hairs. And so as the jellyfish swims, that gypsum crystal rolls around, triggering these sensory hairs, and that tells the jellyfish what direction it's pointing. And that's actually how our own inner ear works. And so as you learn more about this creature, you realize there's so much hidden complexity and beauty in even such a simple thing. So if this creature has that much complexity, what else are we missing in the world? And so back to your question about how did I share this? Again, it can't be printed in a magazine. And I wanted to go beyond just putting this on a YouTube video or making a documentary film. I thought this question of how you share this content matters. And so to explore that, I actually worked with the Science Museum to create an immersive exhibit. And so what this exhibit did is it took this video, I showed just a portion just now of the full secret life of jellyfish, and we took that video and we presented it in multiple forms in the same space. And so this first space you're seeing, we call the jellyfish opera. It has the full life cycle of a jellyfish with no narration, no text, no description, no explanation, purely as a sensory experience. But you leave that space and then you feel like you're more like in a science museum, where we take the life cycle and we break it down into its components. We use these graphic descriptions and illustrations to explain what you're seeing. And that's one format. You've got the opera, you've got the explanation. We've got another theater where I have a conversation with a journalist and we talk and narrate over the video to explain that. We have another section where it's an interactive screen where kids can choose what part of the life cycle they can see, and they can see how a jellyfish eats. And with all of those digital components, in the center of all that are live jellyfish tanks. And the thesis here is, can this combination of different storytelling formats, explanatory, sensory, living jellies, can those synergize to create a connection to this, weird, simple creature in a way that any one of those formats alone would not be able to achieve? That was the experiment. I didn't know the answer to. I didn't know what part of this, of the 5 components, would be the most compelling, the most engaging. And so I wanted to test out this concept. I wanted to test it in a real place where you could watch people move through this and see, what are they looking at? What are they curious about? They have their own agency to choose where to put their eyeballs. Where do they choose to put it? Let me give them this menu and
the
see
whole
where they
experience.
land.
Was there one, just out of curiosity, was there one element or one format that you felt people naturally gravitating to in the way of how we like to consume stories the most?
Interestingly, I think I was most obsessed with the jellyfish opera. I wanted to create the sensory experience. That's what I thought was going to be the most important. In fact, the thing that people responded to the most was a conversation, where there was a human that could be there to translate the experience.
Yeah.
But the most memorable part of this kind of experimental exhibit, there was this moment where the family came into the theater, and there was a young child and parents, and there was no place to sit, and so the parents decided to leave, but the kid wanted to stay. He was probably 5 years old.
Yeah.
And he walked into the center of the theater and plopped himself down, and the parents were like, okay, well, we want to go. What's going on? And so the mom walked in and tried to pick him up to leave. And he started kicking and screaming and kicking and screaming, and so she left him alone, and he was just watching. And they'd walked into the middle of the video, and so then the video ended. And so the kid got up and walked towards the exit, and as soon as the video started again, he didn't see that part. So he ran back to the middle and sat back down, and the parents just gave up. They're like, we're not going to be able to tear this kid away. And I thought, that little kid just made the last 4 years of my life that it took to make this video worth it. That is the kind of quality of attention that I want to cultivate. Can I inspire someone to look that intently, to pay that attention in such a noisy, distracting world? To be able to reach someone like that was like, this is my mission. How do I create stories and share them in a way that inspire this sense of wonder that I hope opens that kid's mind to all the other possibilities in the world?
It's funny, listening to you, that little boy almost reminds me of when you were talking and telling us about your childhood, about this wonder that you had about the natural world. And similarly as well, growing up on Bali, for me personally, there was that curiosity, right? And again, storytelling allows us to grow, hold on to that curiosity and hold on to that wonder into our adult life. But how has that experience of watching that little boy, refusing to go home, how has that shaped the next chapter of your work as a photographer?
That was a transitional moment for me to do this experiment in an exhibit and to test out new ideas. I thought, this is what I want to do from now on, is to experiment with new forms of storytelling. And so that inspired me to start my new project called Wonder Lab, and I'll show a little clip that gives you a sense of what this new project in this new space is. Here's a little clip, and I can explain more after.
For me to be able to create space for young scientists or photographers who, like me, don't quite fit into the bucket of a scientist or photographer, but know that there's something at the intersection of science and storytelling where they want to be. What I'm trying to create is evoking a sense of wonder, and I want to do that in a place in which I'm iterating and experimenting, just like a science lab would.
So what I've done is I've created a space. I basically moved out of my garage into an old ketchup factory in Berkeley, and this is now an experimental space where I can continue trying to innovate in my own storytelling. This is me photographing a chicken egg, but also create a space that I can collaborate with scientists and also bring in classrooms and young storytellers to inspire them to develop new storytelling techniques themselves. So it's one part biology lab, it's one part photo studio, and one part classroom. So to give you an example of some of the workshops that I've led, this is with a group of National Geographic explorers just a couple of weeks ago, teaching some of the lessons that I've learned along the way in how to explore visual storytelling. This is Gab Meja, actually another National Geographic explorer based in the Philippines.
Part of the eye is it? Okay, let's make it okay.
And he had this idea of like, I want to know what my eye looks like. Can we devise a way of photographing my eye? And they came up with this awesome system just on the fly. And I thought, this is the kind of energy that I want to be able to inspire. Can I create a space to share this process of exploration and experimentation to kind of invent new ways of looking at the world?
Yeah, and normalizing the way we can sit and ask those big questions to begin exploring and find the stories we want to tell. I want to make sure that we have some time also for the audience to ask questions. So Anand, are you ready to engage in a few questions with the audience, or?
Not quite. I just wanted to have this last moment to talk about kind of what I hope to achieve with WonderLab. So yes, one part of the goal is to create new images and to think about new ways of sharing those images, whether it's in an immersive exhibit, if it's online, if it's in print. That's kind of my own journey. But I also, beyond that, I want to be able to share this way of seeing the world. And I think the way to do that in the most powerful way is to connect with educators and to be able to share these tools with educators who can then bring their classrooms into this world themselves. And so the little video clips you showed from WonderLab that we showed, those are actually part of a series called I Wonder that I'm creating with the education team at National Geographic to share with teachers alongside curriculum so that they can access the kinds of journey that we're going through in WonderLab and be able to recreate that in their own classrooms. And unfortunately, right now, those resources are only in English, but the vision is to be able to share that with teachers who can share that with their own students. And so we actually host high school field trips and school field trips at the lab. This is our first field trip earlier this year, where we gave students cameras and taught them how to use those cameras as tools for exploration. So the last video I'll share today before we go to the Q&A is a little bit from this field trip. And for those of you who took my slow looking workshop yesterday, you'll notice some similarities. We essentially taught a slow looking workshop using cameras as tools for observation. So we'll play this clip and then we can throw it back to the audience. Here you go.
There you go, there you go, there you go, there you go.
Hello.
Do you know yet?
Perfect, perfect. Pop it right in there. Excellent.
I did that, guys.
Excellent. Okay.
I did
Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, excuse me, guys. I'm gonna give you a camera here. Okay, so your next job, you drew 3 parts. Your next job is to photograph those 3 parts. So each of these flashes is pretty simple. You'll see a little button that's plus and minus. You just press those to make it brighter or darker if your image is too bright. Or the other way to do it is to just loosen the little arm and you can move it forward or back or above or below. But the goal is going to be to take a photo of each of those parts that you first drew. Once you've done that, if you see other things you want to take pictures of, once you've gotten those first 3, take a picture of whatever catches your interest. Background and kind of
We've been coming
size, chugging along. Here, let me try to help you out.
Danny's going to show up in like 10 minutes.
You okay on timing? Cool.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Take
Do you need help taking anything down?
So essentially that's my theory for how to change the world, is inspire people to look at the world around them with fresh attention.
I love it. I love everything that I'm hearing, and also the power of classrooms and education and unlocking this power and potential within each of us to be a storyteller. So thank you for sharing WonderLab. And I'm going to ask for the lights to go on and for the first question from the audience. Do we have any questions for Anand about storytelling, about his work? We have a question right there that I can see in the middle. We have some mic runners. Yes, keep your hand up so we can identify you in the crowd. And if you would just like to introduce yourself with your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Wit, and first of all, really thank you for your presentation. You know, you can hear how excited my voice is. you know, throughout the whole presentation, just really like my heart was beating so hard, because for me, you know, I grew up in the countryside of Thailand, and my dad has these stacks of National Geographic book, and you know, I didn't know so much. I just looked through images, and through this presentation, it somehow made me realize, you know, I got a scholarship to study abroad, travel around, and become a photographer because of these kind of images. You know, and my question to you would be, maybe my life is not so explorative or, you know, adventurous, but is there any way for a photographer like me to get involved in this, you know, powerful storytelling like you do?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So how to get involved? I think the first step is to find that subject, that story that most sparks your own curiosity, that engages your own motivation. That's the first step to be able to take what can be a very difficult and scary journey that will take a lot of time and a lot of effort. You need some source of motivation, so some question that's burning that you want to know the answer to. And then in terms of actually the mechanics of how to work with National Geographic, the best doorway in is the door I took through becoming an explorer, which is how Melati got involved with National Geographic too. And so there's a grant program that you can learn more about on nationalgeographic.org's website. And by pitching an idea and getting a grant, that's the best way to translate that passion and curiosity with the world to become part of this broader community of explorers and to start your journey there.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have time for a couple more questions. Would anyone like to ask a question? Over there, all the way on the left. Oh.
Thank you so much. My name is Warawit Lapanikorn. I'm working for TBL, Thai Beverage Logistics. I have the question. My question is, your work, your job is about natural, physical natural, right? So, is there any connection about the physical that you work, connection to the soul, like a love, something like this? What do you think? You know what I mean?
Yeah, a bit. So, I mean, I think in terms of how you connect to your passion is a core part of the process, I think, is trying to understand, like, you know, as I was telling these stories, I was sharing the facts about, okay, this is how this parasite works, or this is what this bat looks like. And there was a moment along my journey where I realized, you know what, it's not, my goal here is not to share a bunch of facts about the science. My goal is to share a feeling, you know, an emotional response. And in some ways, telling the information in the context expands the potential to have an emotional reaction to that. And the goal at the end is to share a sense of feeling. And the emotion, you know, Caitlin talked about different emotions you can touch on in storytelling. I think that first one she mentioned, awe or wonder, is the emotion that I find the most powerful because of its ability to open ourselves to new ways of seeing or understanding the world. And so that's, even though there's all of this kind of direct and sometimes kind of literal scientific facts in the work that I do, throughout that whole process, what I'm trying to access underneath it is an emotional awakening and connection. So yeah, thank you for that question. We have one more kind of
Same
on
hand,
the
I think all the way
far
yes,
left
at the
there.
far
Yeah.
left. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. First of all, love your speech. Two of you and the one that are Zoom with us in the first place. I'm Kirati from Spotlight. We do the business and economic news. So my question, I have two questions basically. The first one is that I love every bit of your work, but they seem to be very, very professional. So as me and many other people, we have story to tell, but we don't have all the right equipment. So how should we start? This is my first one. And the second one is that apart from just the beauty of the nature, can we tell other stories? For me, basically, I'm from the business and economic side. Can we tell story through pictures or videos that also change the world, make the real impact in terms of business and economics? That's my two questions.
Really interesting questions. And I think I shared sort of stories about the natural world because that's my passion. That's what I grew up most curious about. And so for me, the science comes first and the photography is a tool for sharing that passion and that curiosity. That is by no means saying that only stories about nature or science or the natural world are important. That happens to be my journey because that's my passion. But I think you can absolutely take whatever story you're passionate about and use the same approach that Caitlin talked about. You can hear the kind of approach that I took, that sense of starting. I started just trying to do my job, doing what National Geographic asked me to do. And it was the process of reflecting on that and seeing what worked and what didn't that has driven my journey. And so I don't think you need to start with the fanciest cameras and the most expensive technology. Start with what you have, and if you can develop that process of reflection, that is what I think can drive your path forward. So I say, okay, even if I only have the most basic camera or a phone, start with that and say, what can I do in my own backyard, in my own neighborhood? And what in that speaks to me? What in that inspires that reaction in your family or your friends or your audience? And you can use that as your first lesson to say, okay, I didn't use the fanciest technology to take that first picture of a snake, but it was this beginning of my journey to see, this is the kind of reaction that is meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. And I think you can apply that same process to whatever story using whatever tools you have.
And I think just to add to that, but also to come to the closing of this session with National Geographic on impact storytelling, don't underestimate the power of a conversation. That's oftentimes where you find your voice as a storyteller. And that's the most important lesson, to stay authentic, to hold on to childhood dreams of wonder of the marine biology and nature around you. I know I've learned a lot from this conversation with you, Anand. Thank you so much for sharing your lessons and your insights with us today. Let's please hear it one more time for Anand Varma.
Thank you.
Thank you.